All right, Leo, we've been watching the browsers tier 2. So,
all the time.
So yeah, you up the first one. I'll let you go. This is Vivaldi's Open Letter.
Yes, yeah. Before I get into that, I want to say that did you know? I don't know exactly how it's gonna flesh out, but did you know Brave has an AI bot?
Yes, and it's aptly named.
It is. I don't know how I feel about it, but
Are you getting a kickback?
I don't think so. But if you're in Brave and you're on the beta or the nightly channels, you can talk to me?
Leo.
Yeah.
You can talk to Leo.
Leo is baked into Brave as a chatbot, and then they're going to be opening it up, and then you can, do all the chat GPT type things with it later on.
I think it's awesome. I like talking with Leo. And I think everybody else surely should as well.
I don't think you get the same soapbox.
Okay.
In the chatbot that you do in this show, but it is a Leo, so
maybe
it's something.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so back to Vivaldi's letter. Okay, so we gotta talk about this. Vivaldi wrote an open letter in support of the EU's DMA. Okay, so that's the European Union's Digital Markets Act. Now, this is roughly a way for the EU, which will expand. I mean, you notice the iPhone now has USB-C. The EU has a whole lot of pull. Now, I don't think it's going to come to the US except for in California, Colorado, and Connecticut, because those are the cool states, apparently, yet early. But the EU has Digital Markets Act. And this is an act that is more wide-ranging, but that doesn't really cover what Vivaldi's open letter is. So it's a way to level the digital playing field so that third-party applications can sneak on in there and actually make, which is the 20%, which is the you said it earlier, Dan. Why can't I remember this word? Where it's like the point at which you're cool.
Quick, everybody. Roll the VHS tape back.
Critical mass. Critical mass.
Oh, yeah. I probably did 20% say that.
20% is critical mass for being a competitor in the big wide world of like Microsoft and Apple and stuff. 20%. Okay.
That's a fairly substantial mark.
Right. So this is a way to level the playing field so that third-party competitors can reach critical mass. And Vivaldi is one of those third-party competitors when you zoom out a little bit and realize that Chrome and to an extent Edge and Safari are the big players. Those are the ones, because those come pre-installed on devices. And the DMA categorizes those devices and those softwares as gatekeepers.
Right. Yep.
What happens is, imagine, as much as it might make you sick, you're installing a new Windows 11 machine. And you uncheck all of the privacy boxes, and you know that it doesn't actually do anything because...
It does little anyway, yeah.
But you do because you're like me, and you're like, ew.
Mm-hmm.
And then you get to the desktop, and you're like, you know what I'm going to do is install Firefox because I'm a cool kid, and I like multi-account containers. So what do you have to do? You have to double-click on Microsoft Edge.
You sure do.
And in that way, Microsoft Edge is a gatekeeper.
Yep.
So you got to go to getfirefox.com or go to firefox.com or mozilla.org or whatever, and you go get your browser, right? However you do that, right? And then you install it. And then what do? You have to make it your default, right?
Yeah, it doesn't do that automatically, unfortunately.
Yeah. Right. So you launch Firefox and like, hey, you want me to be the default browser? And you're like, yeah, because I went and got you, man.
But then you click on the and it doesn't do actually anything. It takes you to a settings page where you actually have to change it.
Exactly. So you have to jump through hoops just to get it to do HTTP and HTTPS, and for some reason locally, HTML and HTML.
Yep.
Why? But that's the question that the DMA is trying to answer. The answer to why is no.
Yeah.
That should not be the way that things are done. You should have a choice. So,
like a browser election.
ooh.
That's
all
a
right.
fancy thing,
So,
huh?
Yeah. So Vivaldi has come out in support of the DMA because the DMA specifies that you just can't have a gatekeeper like that. You have to give consumers the choice. Give them the choice of a browser.
Hey, Internet Explorer, anybody? Remember that?
Exactly. And when you choose the browser, do not force the consumers through hoops to be able to actually make it the default browser. There's one thing making it the default browser when you click on a link, but there's another to making a default browser to actually do all the things that browsers do, and Windows stands between you and your browser to prevent that.
Yeah.
And not only that, for years, well, how long has Windows 11 been out? A couple years? For the entirety of Windows 11's existence, it has been difficult to not only make it the default, but to keep it the default.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, because as things update, it wants to change it back.
And all of a sudden, Edge pops up, and then, it's like, hey, guess what, man? I'm your default browser again. Do you want
I got a new version. You want to use me, right?
Of course. And no, I set my default browser a long time ago. Stop asking me this question. But it doesn't stop there, because Outlook and Visio and OneNote and all of the other Microsoft applications that run on Windows will sneakily open up your links in not your default browser, which is wrong. I've chosen my default browser. You know how I want to open links. You know exactly what you're doing because you did it in Windows 7. This was not a problem prior to this. But now all of a sudden, it is. And so, to kind of sum it up, Vivaldi basically came out in support of all of these things, giving consumers a choice, making sure that when you set a default browser, it stays the default browser. And after an update, Edge doesn't come out at you and say, hey, guess what? And when you go to download Firefox and install Firefox, it's not like when you Bing Firefox, it's not like, hey, you know who the coolest browser in the world is? Edge. It doesn't do that. It should not do that. And when you get to the Firefox webpage and you download the executable and you double click on it and it's like, hey, you know who the coolest browser is? Not Firefox. Just keep using Edge over here. Don't do that. So all that to say, the Digital Markets Act is looking to bring choice to the platforms, at least in the EU, and as far as the desktop is concerned, in this letter.
Right.
So I agree with this. I would love, especially on Windows boxes that I have to use, I would love to get the choice to say, yeah, Firefox. I don't even need to see Edge at all. Ever. Just Firefox and make it the default. And I'll never have to think about it again.
Right.
That's what I do now. I just have to jump through hoops to make sure it stays that way.
I know. Yeah.
So that was a good thing.
I agree. I'm in support of that as well. I think that's pretty great. I mean, even if sure, Firefox, yes, that's we love that. But I mean, Brave, Vivaldi, all of those are fine choices too, and they do things a little differently so that, probably a little more privacy respecting in regards to if you're going to use a Chromium base on things. So
right. Maybe it was a little biased of me to talk about a Vivaldi open letter and then just kept saying Firefox.
Maybe, but
sorry,
I don't
Vivaldi.
know. But you're not wrong. It doesn't. Well, yeah, but I mean, sure, options are what we want. That's a lot of times why we go to Linux. But why can't we have them everywhere?
Yeah. Oh, Nate said like 100 bajillion Linux distros in
yeah, he did
in his write up. So Yeah, we like options. We like to have.
We sure do.
But speaking of Firefox, speaking of the parent company Mozilla, whom everybody likes to ask, what do they do with all that money that they get? They get billions of dollars, entire write-ups. I have an answer for you where all the money's going.
Okay. Yep.
So
I'm listening.
Back in the end of 2022, Mozilla did a study. They recently wrote about it again. And the article that was talking about it was titled, Deciding for Ourselves. 98% of people want a browser choice screen, Mozilla study finds. Now, this is before the DMA was passed. The DMA was being debated, but it hadn't been passed. Now it's been passed.
That's a crazy high number. I don't know what the sample size on that was.
Oh, trust me. This isn't just Mozilla did an internet survey.
Yeah.
They physically went out. Germany, Poland, and there's a third country that I cannot remember.
All right, but that's a lot. Yeah.
12,000 people.
Okay, that's substantial.
The lower limit to is it a good scientific study is around 2,000 people. This is 6 times that. So, Mozilla asked 12,000 people how they like to choose their browser, and as it turns out, they don't like being fed a default. 98% of people.
How about that's a crazy high number.
Right. And so one of the big overarching questions was they wanted to find out whether or not browser choice screens affect people's decisions. And as it turns out, they don't always go for the default. But you can be super subversive about it. And one of the things that I know will happen, because you got to follow the letter of the law, not the spirit of the law, right? Just because the spirit would have you allow the consumer to make the best choice for them doesn't mean that a company like Google can't be like, well, you know what, in Android, we're going to put all these little dark choices for you so that we push you toward using Chrome. You know, because that's what they've been doing with Google for the past 20 years. So,
sure enough,
what they found was the design, content, and timing of the choice screen matters. So, selecting your own default before you have to open up a browser makes you more likely to select something other than that browser. So, picture yourself just starting up in Windows, not you personally, maybe someone less technical in your life. If that person has to double-click Edge to get to a different browser and download the browser and go through all the steps and all that stuff just to be able to use that browser every single time and not have to open up 2 separate browsers on I don't know what happened, but it's a different browser now. It turns out that if they're able to choose a browser before ever having to open up Edge and then do all that rigmarole, they are more likely to choose not Edge. That is huge. And
it is huge.
They did this test on Android, which meant that they didn't choose Chrome.
Yeah.
That is huge. Firefox's market share could shoot up. And that includes Vivaldi, it includes Brave, it includes Opera, it includes all the browsers you don't like, right?
Yeah, any of those, yeah.
But this is something they found. That out of 12,000 people, if you're not given a choice or given a browser to start with, you are much more likely to choose not the default. That is massive and a big part of why the DMA is so important.
It makes sense.
And it turns out, and this is where that 98% came from in the title, 98% of people out of that 12,000 said, yeah, let me just choose it. I'll pick one. It seems so simple.
It does, yeah.
Right? And the companies that would have you believe otherwise are telling you, well, no. Consumers would have paralysis. They would have that decision paralysis, and they wouldn't be able to choose. So we're just going to give them one that is the tyranny of the default.
Yeah, absolutely. They want you to stay within the ecosystem.
Exactly.
Stay within the box and never leave the ecosystem. And Well, all right. So here this goes to convenience there in a way, because, keeping it with what you have in front of you is very convenient. You don't want to, you don't want to stray from that. People don't really like to, work at all. They want it given to them. So it's understandable. Like if you have just like you start off with a choice, you're starting at a different point in the map, if you will.
Exactly. And the big boys don't want to admit it, but they're not as good as they say they are. And this proves it. So the last thing that they were asking about was user satisfaction. Just, how generally, how happy are you with the choices that you made? So the choice screens resulted in better user satisfaction across a ton of metrics, including ease of setting up the device, the amount of time it took up to set up the device, and the range of settings they could customize. Now, an aggregate of 12% increased user satisfaction overall.
Wow.
So you give people a choice, and while they might be okay with what they have, 12% increased user satisfaction when they had the ability to say, I'd rather have Vivaldi. I'd rather have Firefox. I'd rather have Opera. I'd rather stay with the default. That is a choice too, and that is cool.
Yeah, that turns into internet happiness right there, folks.
Exactly. Now, if you wanted to know where all that money's going, to stuff like this, to figuring out how to make the internet better for all of us. And if you go to the blog, you'll see it.
That's what they claim, yeah. And so this is good. I mean, it's unfortunate that it probably doesn't hit hit your face enough, and that's why we're pushing it out to you.
If you go to Linux User Spaces Reddit, or if you go to Linux User Spaces Lemmy, you would see this news, or the Discord, you would see this news, and it would at least come across your feed, and you may or may not read that kind of stuff, but it's there. It's absolutely there. They're doing this work, and it's good work. Here's my soapbox, as if I weren't already on one the entire time, right?
It's okay, Leo. It's your turn. Go for it.
So here's my soapbox, but I'm going to start it out with a couple of things. The first being, yes, the money goes to social things like that. And that's all well and good. Now we know what people want. Sure. The other question that gets thrown around a lot, or the other assertion is, well, they're just not doing enough to Firefox then. Maybe if they just worked on Firefox some more. Well, Mozilla doesn't just do Firefox. They do a lot of stuff. But Firefox is one of those things. Well, this one's for you, person that says they don't work on Firefox enough. So the thing that used to be an add-on, the translations add-on. Yeah, Mozilla Translations.
It was called a first-party extension rather than a third-party extension. So it was a little more mainstream as far as an add-on, but it was an add-on, yes.
Yeah, it's like multi-account containers. That was first-party, or is first-party. The funny thing about that is that I don't think it really gives it that much more traction. Because the people I talk about...
I don't. Yeah, you're probably right.
They were like, dude, have you seen Chromium workspaces? Wow. And I'm like, yeah, I just use multi-account
containers.
yeah, exactly.
I got you.
Because it's, in my opinion, it's better. Anyway, so the translation thing that used to be a first-party extension is now, it's just in Firefox now.
It's built in, yeah.
So you can go to a website, you can auto-translate. I know what you're saying. Well, they should have had this, 50 versions. Sure, but it's here now. They are doing work to the browser. The money that you're sending to Mozilla goes to Firefox too. And it's actually really cool, and it works like pretty much every other browser. You go to a web page, it detects it's in a different language. If it's in one of the languages that it knows, the little icon pops up, you click it, click translate.
And here's the big thing that needs to be highlighted. It happens on your local machine. It doesn't go. It doesn't send all that text somewhere else to do some analysis and scrape where you've been and all of that jazz. It does it right there.
Oh, man, you could say that entire part again.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
Local-only translations. Oh, my favorite.
So I've been using this actually for a while. This is one of the extensions that I actually installed, and I've been using it for a while. There are a few pages that I go to that are not in English, and that's the only language that I can barely know.
Yeah, right. Listen, I'm over here looking at the people in Europe and the people in Asia that know like 5 languages, and I'm like, I can barely get by in one. Okay.
Yeah, right. Yeah, exactly.
Quit flexing.
Yeah. So I've been using this one for a bit. It's actually really great.
Yep. It absolutely is. So I mean, another privacy win. That's the other thing, is that it's privacy first. You don't have any idea what a lot of the other translator things are doing in the background because they don't necessarily tell you.
Nope.
Up front. And the other is we live in a Google world, as much as I don't like it. We live in a Google world, and Google Meet links be getting thrown around all the time. I have to use them for work. I get it. One thing that Firefox has not been able to do, and one of the common complaints that I hear all the time about in Firefox, is that it doesn't work well with Google this or Google that or whatever. Well, they've added video effects and background blur. Those are now available to you in Firefox. So if you were missing those, if that was a reason why you weren't using it or using it as much, that's been fixed. And just like the Wayland thing, if you haven't tried Firefox in a while, you should try it again.
Absolutely.
Because these little incremental upgrades, little fixes that get put in are not front and center on the release notes. So most of the news sites that tell you about, well, Firefox is coming out and this is what it does, don't go deep enough into the release notes to tell you this now works. Because a lot of that stuff is very personal. Those kinds of things are something that you or you and your friends do. So if you've been doing it on Chrome, Vivaldi and Brave, maybe Opera to a smaller extent, get a pass. It's time to ditch Chrome and fall in love with Firefox again.
They just make it better all the time. And so I'm right there with you. I've actually, so Vivaldi is like one of my favorites. Don't get me wrong. Got some great features of it.
It's the plasma of browsers, man. Every feature you'd ever want.
It is. I don't use all of it, but I use some of it, and I like the things that I use, and that's pretty much the only place you can get them. So I use that, but I've been using, I think, Firefox quite a bit more as of late, because it is just getting better all the time.
Yep. It absolutely is. So if you haven't tried it lately, try it again. It's really, really good.
Yeah. The other place that I've been using it, not just on my desktop, right? So I've been using it on my phone again because Leo talked me into it. And
because you can get add-ons on it.
Yeah, you can. And it was a little bit terrible there for a little while. It just kind of was real crashy.
No arguments. It was.
But it's been super solid the last little bit, and so that's pretty great experience as well.
The baked-in Firefox ad blocker is pretty good, but there's nothing like having uBlock on your phone.
I know, uBlock, love that one. It's my favorite add-on.
So catch these, the Mozilla ones, and other great topics as they unfold on our Lemmy instance, our subreddit, our news channel, our Discord. Oh, wait, news channel on Discord. So, if you haven't been, linuxuserspace.show/ I think it's right above me, so I'm going to point like this. I'm going to point like this, because it's right there on the YouTube. Right here. Lemmy, Reddit, Discord, Mastodon, Telegram, Matrix, Twitch, Twitter. It's there. Go check them out. They are a bastion of all of the dumb stuff that I say all the time. Dan says much smarter things than me.
Oh, yeah. Absolutely.
Yes. He said it. It's awesome. So check it out. Come join the community. Come have a chat. I think Dan and I are a very accessible pair. We like to.
Yeah. We should like at least once or twice daily.
Yeah, we get down in the weeds. I just helped somebody figure out how to install Zoom on their new Ubuntu install, which is super cool, man. Yeah, I did, by the way, tell them to install the Snap. I hope that was a good thing. That was a good thing, right?
It was an easy way to go.
Zoom and Snap is cool? No, it's not. Uh-oh.
I don't know.
Okay.
It worked for them, so I guess it was cool.
Is the Deb better? I don't know. Now I don't know.
It's probably it's a little more complicated to install, no?
Right. So, one command, easy peasy, because they asked for a command.
Yeah, and they were, you could tell they're new. They're learning.
Yep.
And so it's probably a good place to start.
Well, I like it. I absolutely like it. They, at the very least, you got Zoom. If that doesn't work very, very well for you.
It worked for them. So that's the most important thing.
Exactly. But if not, if you have troubles with it, that's what the Telegram channel's for. That's where the question was asked, and that's where I'll be, and that's where I'll keep an eye out. And if there's any issues, then I will absolutely help you install the Deb. Because, that's just what cool community people do, right?
Yep. So totally at Leo.
Yeah. When it breaks. I'm your guy.